and we will have the Q&A session after that. So our third speaker is Nassef Manabilang Adiong, founder of International Relations and Islamic Studies Research Cohort, founder of Philippine International Studies Organization, and founder of Decolonial Studies Research Network, Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, Bangsamoro Parliament, Director of Policy Research and Legal Services. He is currently a Director of Policy and Legal Services and elected member of at large, ISA Asia Pacific region, and many others work experiences, and also journals, books, and researches, fellowships, and consultancies. I can't read 9 pages of Nassef's CV apparently, but one of my colleagues say that Nassef is prominent in Islam and international relations. So I suppose Nassef will give presentation about Islam and international relations. So I will give the time to Nassef. Time is yours.
Thank you, Muhammad, and thank you also for the previous speaker, to Hans, also for presenting the Islam in America situation, or what's the environment going on there. I'll share screen before I start my talk. I'll share screen a video, a very short video that would probably remind us on how diverse Islam is. So just bear with me for a moment while I'm just have to share the sound. Can everyone hear the sound?
Yes.
Okay.
The religion known as Islam originated in the 7th century of the Common Era in Arabia in the city of Mecca, a center of trade at which gathered diverse peoples, including those from the Jewish and Christian faiths. At the center of Mecca was a cuboid structure known as the Kaaba. According to Muslim traditions, the Kaaba was first built by the Prophet Adam and then rebuilt by the Prophet Abraham for the worship of the one God, Allah. However, by the 7th century, the Kaaba had turned into a major pilgrimage site where different Arab tribes venerated idols. Some of the residents of Mecca rejected the worship of idols. Prominent among these was Muhammad, son of Abdullah, who was known in the city as the Trustworthy. In the year 610, at the age of 40, Muhammad was on retreat in a mountain cave during the month of Ramadan, when he is said to have been visited by the angel Gabriel, who commanded him, recite, and revealed words which Muhammad felt had been written on his heart. These revelations, Muslims believe, continued over the next 23 years and eventually came to be collected as the Quran. They declare that God is one, overturning the polytheistic foundations of 7th century Arabian religion. They also question the economic inequalities of society by calling for social justice, and particularly the care of the poor and orphans, reminding people that they were accountable to God for their actions. The Quran declares itself to be the latest in a long line of revelations from God to humanity, explicitly affirming the truth of the Torah, the Psalms, and the Gospels, and teaching about faith through stories about Moses, Joseph, Mary, and Jesus, and other prophets. The Quran states that the message of divine unity is universal, for God has sent messengers to every nation and people. Tradition places the total number of prophets at 124,000. In the Quran, Muhammad and his followers, as well as the previous prophets and their followers, are all called Muslim, a word that literally means a person who has submitted to God. Understood in a general sense, everything in the universe is Muslim, in its submission to the Creator, silently singing his praises. Muhammad began his mission teaching to a small group of followers in Mecca, but soon found himself ostracized by the Meccan aristocracy, who were unwilling to part ways with the traditions of their forefathers. In the year 622, facing severe persecution, Muhammad fled from Mecca to the oasis city of Yathrib, now known as Al-Medina Al-Munawwara, the city of light, or simply Medina. This event, called Hijrah or emigration, marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. In Medina, Muhammad was able to organize his followers into a community for the first time. He negotiated both war and peace with the Meccans and the surrounding tribesmen, eventually conquering Mecca in the year 630. By the end of Muhammad's mission, he had provided what the Quran calls a beautiful example of the way to live in accordance with God's will, which Muslims from then until today have endeavored to emulate. When Muhammad passed away in 632, there were disagreements among his companions about succession and the nature of political and spiritual authority. In the course of time, these would lead to the split between what we today call Sunni and Shia Islam. Other forms of diversity within the Islamic community, or Ummah, would develop over the centuries. Early Muslim leaders and dynasties expanded the borders of Islamic civilization through to Spain, Central, South and Southeast Asia, Africa, and even into Eastern Europe. In the process, Islamic concepts were adapted to local contexts, at times accepting ideas and modes of expression from traditions as diverse as Greek philosophy and Confucianism. The ever-developing traditions of faith, practice, and spirituality unfolded as Muslim communities emerged and evolved in diverse settings across the globe. Muslim traders, mystics, scholars, poets, rulers, and architects all contributed to the shaping of distinctive regional cultures, as trans-regional Islamic notions and traditions interacted with local communities to produce distinctive forms of law, statecraft, theology, art, architecture, and science. Like other world religions, Islam too has been invoked to support and legitimize diverse and even contradictory values. For example, interpretations of Islam have been used to both liberate and oppress women, or to promote peace and provide arguments for war. In more recent times, Islam has been utilized by a variety of nation-states to legitimize a range of political ideologies. As a result, the experience of being Muslim today is often deeply influenced by the political context one is living in. Diversity of interpretation has always been an essential aspect of the Muslim experience, as particular groups have turned towards different individuals for guidance, from religious scholars to members of the Prophet's family considered divinely appointed, to spiritual guides who teach through the sanctity of their characters and the wisdom of their insight. It is helpful to think of Islam in terms of both unity and diversity. Muslims believe in one God, Allah, whom they worship and conceive of in different ways. The Prophet Muhammad provides the single most important model of how Muslims should live an exemplary life of faith, but there are diverse understandings of how this model should be followed. The single most important text in Islam, the Quran, is interpreted in diverse ways and for diverse purposes, and there's a single Muslim community that is diversified through cultural contexts, beliefs and practices, and the diverse authorities whom they follow.
Your voice cannot be heard, Nassef.
I'm sorry. I wasn't able to unmute myself. Now you can see that there are some salient points in the video conveying, such as the continuation of the Quranic message forthcoming from the books in the Bible, from the Torahs of the Jews, as a unison and also a continuation of the revealed message. You can also take a look at hundred thousands of messengers from prophets, from Buddhas, as being the messengers of Allah to the world. And you can see that the revealed message is not only for Muslims alone, but it also dedicates the message all throughout the creations of the entire cosmos, not only in this earth, but also throughout galaxies and universe. So you can take a look that it does not dedicate the message alone to Muslims, but also to also other non-Muslims, but to all, but to the entire cosmos. You can also take a look that there are diverse interpretations of the Quranic revealed message. We are not like the Vatican Church, the Roman Catholic Vatican Church, that they have one body and the papacy leading them to have a biblical interpretation that is authored and controlled and approved by the body of bishops. So we have different schools of thought, schools of jurisprudence, and even ideas that we have all over the Muslim civilization for the past 1400 years. And so there is plurality and multi-civilizational and multiculturalism in as Islam expand from Arabia throughout the world. Now, when we think of certain uh, periodicity or an epoch in Islamic civilization, we always refer, yes, we always do refer to the lives of Prophet of our dear Prophet, may peace be upon him, and the first four Rashidun Caliph, the rightly guided Caliph. But we also need not to also marginalize or less of think about the other civilizations that have produced because of the beauty of Islam in concomitant with science, with progress, with development. Thus, I'm referring to the golden age of Islamic civilization from 9th century to 12th century. So when we think about that, we think of diverse opinions from different scholars. We think about scholars conveying their message, not being feared of being threatened of their lives because they are lumineering radicals that might kill or threaten their lives because they're espousing a different idea or different opinions or different opinions on certain subject matter on Islam or Muslim society. So you can see that even in the writings, for example, a recent book that was published by Professor Ahmed Kuru, that even the reason why there was an Islamic golden age of Islamic civilization because of the rise and existence of independent scholarship, meaning the ulamas were independent from any control or strings from the sultanate system or from the political leadership. That all Muslim scholars at that time were actually funded by their own means. They have their own family business, their own economic wakaf foundation, and other means to support their science discoveries, their scientific experiments, their philosophical understanding of Islamic revelation. So you can see that almost 90% of those who are living during the golden age of Islam are autonomous and independent. And according to the scholarship of Professor Ahmed Guru, is that the start of the diminishing or decline of the golden age was when an alliance between the state and the ulama has started, meaning that many of the projects, many of the scientific progress, many of the philosophical, jurisprudential development that is happening during the time were controlled and manipulated by state funding or whoever is the sultan, whoever is the caliph at the time. So you can also take a look at the exchanges of scholarship during those times, especially in Al-Andalus between Ibn Rushd, Imam Al-Ghazali. You don't have to go back further because certain very prominent Jewish theologian slash philosopher, Ibn Maimun or Moses Maimonides, have also influenced many of the Muslim scholars and Christian scholars. Now, one of the pioneer, prominent Christian scholar slash theologian that he had influenced, also influenced by Aristotle and also Al-Kindi and Ibn Rushd was Saint Thomas Aquinas. Saint Thomas Aquinas in his Summa Theologica writings uh, is very prominent because it has paved the way for just a second, someone's knocking. I'm sorry about the disruption in my talk. Um, my mother was knocking in my room. So just to continue, now we do have these exchanges of scholarship between Christians, Jews, and also Muslims at the time. We do have the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. We also have places of worship. For example, in one institutional building, where Jews and Christians, Armenian church at one side aspect of the building, at the other aspect of the building is a masjid, and then we have the how do you call that synagogue for Jews. So you can see so many tolerance, the Tanzimat policy of the Ottoman Empire. We can actually see that what the Ottoman Empire has implemented was a very secular one, because majority of the total population of the Ottoman Empire are not Muslims. Only 20% of the total population of Ottomans were Muslims. 80% of the total population of the Ottoman Empire were actually non-Muslims. So they have to, integrate and have a multiculturalistic and multi-civilizational policies that would enamor and also provide service to not only for Muslims but also for the non-Muslim citizenry of the Ottoman Empire. So you can take a look that with the start of the State Ulama Alliance in 12th century, actually, according to scholarship, it started even way back in 11th century, that it started the decline of the Islamic civilization because of the manipulation or control of the state towards an independent scholarship of the ulamas. And of course, we have the 1258 ransack of Baghdad, where many thousands of libraries were burned by the Mongols. And of course, and the start of the Western European colonization of the Muslims. That's the reason why in the past we're not even talking about or even having discourse about, oh, this is halal and this is haram, or halal versus halal, or this is Islamic versus un-Islamic, or is Islam compatible with democracy? I happened to take a look at Etienne's gaps, such as on gender, economy, medicine. This is quite unique that she also mentioned a gap on medicine, because medicine actually, or health science, was actually perfected by Muslims. Even vaccination, if you can take a look, the first vaccines that the first civilization that discovered that perfected vaccination was Islamic civilization. Remember that many of even Europeans at the time were afraid of what happening in the Muslim world, because of the vaccines that had stopped the pandemic during that time. But because of these principalities in Europe, because of their diplomatic relationship with the Ottomans, then they saw that there is a positivity being vaccinated. And yes, of course, the Muslim civilization perfected medicine. You can take a look that even European kingdoms would even travel from Europe down to Muslim civilization to have their children, to have their family being medicated by Muslim surgeons, by Muslim doctors at that time. Uh, uh, Even Sina's the canon on medicine is still being used by European doctors. So you can take a look at all of these great facets, the continuation of the message, where we got the Abrahamic message between the let's say the unison between Abraham and his children, Ishmael and Isaac, as a kind of a genealogical ancestry to Jesus and to Prophet Muhammad. So you can take a look at so many of these, and what will happen if what should be the recourse of a Muslim leadership, of a Muslim state? There is actually one thing that have told you, the reason why I think we are discussing this inclusivity issue is, I think, the imposition of the European territorial sovereignty. Sovereignty, or in Islamic parlance, hakimiyya, as accorded in the Quranic message, or the sovereign one, is quite different, a different conception with how the Europeans, after the 1648 Peace of Westphalia, from the 1111 Treaty of Concord to 1555 Peace of Augsburg, have concocted. So it is quite different that sovereignty for Europeans is actually based on fixed geographical location, as opposed to what have the Muslims have experienced with the travelogues, the travels of Ibn Battuta, the travels of many of the Chalabi from Turkish travelogues. You can take a look how they are very well integrated within the Muslim world when they travel. They don't have to present visa or being even checked if they're terrorists or not. So this territorial sovereignty is quite different to what sovereignty it has been the meaning for the Islamic world. It is quite similar to the Christendom. Saint Thomas Aquinas, when he think about the theological, philosophical understanding of sovereignty, he termed it as a public welfare or common good, which is quite similar to many Muslim scholars when they think about sovereignty that is based on uh, uh, istisla and maslaha or public welfare or public interest. That's how they think about the word sovereignty, which is different now that it's now being imposed under the dictum of based on the 1935 Montevideo Treaty regarding the duties of state, that it should be based on territorial sovereignty or nation state. And this is, I think, one of the things that have embodied to our political schema. So, what should be the Muslim state's treatment to non-Muslim minorities? So, I'm just going to share this last video, and I'll stop there.
Religious Minorities Under Muslim Rule, based on an article written by Tasneem Al-Kik. Religious minorities are often seen as oppressed and vulnerable victims of brutal Muslim rulers. And aren't they? Take a look at ISIS, persecuting, killing, enslaving, and exiling religious groups based off differences of belief. They take the name of Islam and claim their actions are inspired by its teachings. But this portrayal is far from accurate. The original laws of early Islamic civilizations actually resulted in generally tolerant societies. So what were these laws? Religious minorities under Muslim rule were referred to as dhimmi, or the protected people. Short for Ahlul Dhimma, it is often loosely defined as people of the book, but it literally translates to those protected by God and his prophet. This meant that protecting non-Muslims was actually seen as a divine responsibility and not to be taken lightly. Under Muslim rule, the state was required to protect religious minorities from both internal and external harm. Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Whoever wrongs a peaceful non-Muslim or infringes his rights, I will personally prosecute him on the day of judgment." Religious minorities also enjoyed legal and religious autonomy, meaning they could practice their religion without interference. Essentially, the power of the Muslim state was dependent on providing two resources to its people: security and justice. But there was a special tax on religious minorities under Muslim rule called the jizya. Non-Muslims were required to pay this poll tax in return for protection from the Muslim state. Muslims are also required to pay a similar tax called the zakah. But there were certain legal bindings pertaining to the jizya. Firstly, the amount of jizya paid depended on the economic status of the payee. The rich paid more, the poor paid less. Secondly, the jizya was only taxable on able-bodied men. It exempted them from military service and protected them during war. Thirdly, the jizya did not have to be paid in gold or silver. The Muslim state recognized non-monetary payments to provide ease to the payee. Fourth, if the state could not provide military protection to the non-Muslims, the law required the state to return the jizya back to them. And fifth, some people were actually exempt from paying the jizya. The tax was not applicable to women, children, the elderly, the disabled, the poor, and monks. But where is there legal proof that non-Muslims under Muslim rule should be treated humanely? There are three Islamic documents that set the foundation. When Prophet Muhammad first migrated to Medina, he contracted a treaty with the Jewish tribes called the Charter of Medina. This treaty allowed the Jews to continue their lives without interference while obligating them to help defend the city if necessary. Ibn Qayyum, an imam and student of knowledge, wrote Ahkam Ahlul Dhimma, or the Laws of the Protected People. This massive legal text was a 2,000-page comprehensive encyclopedia on all the regulations pertaining to religious minorities. Cited in the text is the Pact of Umar, our third document. This was a list of agreements between the second Caliph Umar and the people of Syria promoting Christian and Jewish self-government and legal autonomy, and requiring their support against enemies of the state when needed. At a time when Hellenistic societies actively persecuted Christians and autonomous living was never an option, these Islamic laws were unique. There was never widespread systematic persecution of any religious group in the Islamic world. Did instances of persecution still happen under Muslim rulers? Of course, without a doubt, because ultimately, almost all those instances were rooted in the pursuit of power, not in the principles of Islam. In essence, Islamic thought declared that the protection of the people, regardless of any difference, is a divine responsibility.
So that is the last video that I'm going to share. And I think that it is also imperative to tell and to relay this message that it is quite lamentable and also quite saddening that the Islam in Southeast Asia is now being, I think, incarcerated within this certain ideology that I would call post-colonial Middle Eastern Islamic version. Uh, we all know that there is a trend of Arabization of Muslims in Southeast Asia, and it's not only happening in your country, but it's also happening in my country. So we need to tend to have a gauge of what is the Islamic message when it speaks of inclusivity, of multiculturalism, of civilizational, of plurality, of diversity, so that we can have a sense of the true essence of Islamic inclusivity. Thank you, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Nassef, for comprehensive explanation on Islamic history. And I think I get that ulama, independences of ulama, free from political influence and many things, have have built peaceful and modern civilization across the history, and it's outstanding. I think where Ottoman Empire, most of them are non-Muslims, and then where Islamic perspectives are quite protective in protecting minority other than Muslims itself. Okay, so here we are in the Q&A sessions. Audiences from Zoom meetings in the rooms may chat in the chat rooms, or you may raise hand. Or is there anybody who want to ask questions from this room? Okay, I think we have one question from the students here. Okay, you can state your name first.
Oke, sebelumnya perkenalkan nama saya Siti Nur Khalifah. Ingin bertanya, tuh Dr. Nassef, bagaimana suasana dan perlakuan publik serta pemerintahan Filipina terhadap minoritas Muslim dan negara apakah di Southeast Asia yang menurut Anda paling open dan ideal terhadap diversitas yang harus diteladani? Oke. Menurut Dr. Nassef, bagaimana suasana dan perlakuan publik serta pemerintahan Filipina terhadap minoritas Muslim dan negara apakah di Southeast Asia yang menurut Anda paling open dan ideal terhadap diversitas yang harus diteladani?
The question is for you, Nassef. Okay. Regarding the Philippines, um, how is minority Muslims there? I mean, the government treatment and the society's treatment towards Muslim minority in there. And do you think, where do you think in Southeast Asia countries are more safe from Muslim minority? There are two questions for you.
Yes, thank you for the question. Um, the status of Muslims in the Philippines is doing good because for a very long time, for several decades, that the Muslims have fighting against the national government, they were able to concocted a negotiation, a peace process or a peace negotiated treaty with the national government. So we do have the Muslim rebels at the time being called as Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Now that the treaty has evolved to a more well integrated within the Philippine Constitution, the legislation, the Congress of the Philippines have legislated a law called Bangsamoro Organic Law, paving the way for the autonomous parliamentary leadership in the Bangsamoro. In 2019, it was established, the parliament was established in 2019, and now the members of the parliament have legislating laws that that would promote the interests of the Bangsamoro, the interests of the Muslims in the Philippines as a minority in the Philippines. It's a predominantly Catholic, Christian Catholic country. So the Muslims now are doing fine. There are no more conflict, although there are some minute uh, um, insurgents, but they are now being taken care of by the Bangsamoro police force in partnership with the national government or local government units. What was the second part of the question? How the Muslims in the Philippines see it themselves in compare with Muslims in Southeast Asia? Is
Yeah.
that the second question?
Yeah, the second question is about where do you think the safest countries in Southeast Asia?
The safest.
For, for diversity.
For diversity,
Yeah.
yes. I'm thinking of I would say in terms of diversity. Yes, we have Indonesia as diverse as it is because of its archipelagic geographical structure, that there are many islands similar to the archipelagic Philippines, where it has a multivariate languages and multi facets of its cultures and norms. So I think that the diversity is very unique in Indonesia. So long as the Indonesian Muslim societies are not being hijacked by these radicals that are coming from the Middle East, or those Indonesians who probably, because it's quite similar to Philippines, after gaining their education or Islamic education from Saudi Arabia, from some Arab countries, Jordan, and when they went back to the Philippines, they insinuate, I would say, violence. As you can see in our society in the Philippines, there was this invasion of one city. It's called the Marawi Siege. This is the only Islamic city that is actually written in Philippine laws as recognized as the Islamic city of Marawi. And yet there were many of those extremist radicals who gained their education from Jordan, from Saudi, and then went back here and then invaded the city. Actually, 60 or 70% of the entire city was devastated. You can take a look in Google. You can Google that one. So I think Indonesia has a very unique characterization of Islamic diversity. Uh, a second a second Southeast Asian country that I can think of that have kind of a diverse, safe, I mean, when you call it safe or there's a secured environment of diversity is, I think, Thailand. Thailand, you can take a look that the halal industry in Thailand is so developed that it helps even the Thai economy because of the halal industry in Thailand. Although majority of the Muslims in Thailand are in the southern part, if I'm not mistaken, the Patanis and the Muslims in Thailand, they really push forward the Muslim interest, the inhabitants in Thailand, and make it nationalize their halal industry. So there is the sense of recognition of the Thai state towards Muslims, although there are still some kind of conflicts happening or occurring. Thank you.
Thank you. Um, I think the first question is also applied to Hans. Since a while ago, here in Universitas Islam Negeri Walisongo Semarang, organized a study in USA, and some of the questions arising regarding Islamophobia and social treatment to women with hijab. So, can you elaborate more, Hans, about Islamophobia in US? Is it decreasing?